What the fuck?
It's like croutons in a soup.
Don't turn down any opportunity, whether it's a camp, a clinic, because you never know literally who's watching.
Make your own decision and stick with them and know they're the right decisions, right? And even if they aren't right, don't regret them.
He didn't know creatine existed. So you got some creatine? He's like, oh yeah, lift heavyweight.
Shipped across the border. I shipped across the border.
Shipped across the border, man.
Welcome back to Shipped Across the Border.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Shipped Across the Border. My name is Max, and I'm here with Chris, and we are joined, super fortunately, we have an amazing opportunity to interview CEO and founder of Atlas Protein Bars and Tufts graduate, James Oliver.
Yeah, so
Thanks for having me, guys.
Just want to start this off by thanking you, first of all, for giving us your time, and also thanking you for the protein bars that you sent us. Those got demolished in about 4 days, so
Maybe even less.
Yeah.
He only let me have one of them. I got a taste test, and then, I mean, he's the bodybuilder, macro tracking, everything, and he just took them to town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4 days seems a little long.
Yeah.
Should be less if we're doing our job.
Yeah.
We're very curious how you found out about the podcast, especially from, I'm super familiar with Tufts, the Boston area. A couple of my friends play on the basketball team over there. So when you emailed Chris, so we were obviously Chris is super involved in bodybuilding and nutrition and everything. So we just jumped on the opportunity to have you on the podcast and learn, but just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, it just came up in our research. We're always just looking to have discussions with people who are in the space, who are interested in nutrition and health. And when there's obviously the geographic overlap, just seemed like it made sense.
Fire. So I want to start this off because I've listened to a few other interviews you did, and I'd like to give some context for our viewers and sort of go through your story, but I also don't want to stick to that entirely. So I'd say we quickly just speed run who you are, why you started Atlas, and that kind of thing, and then we'll just go on from there.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So how did you start Atlas and why?
I started it for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to really have freedom over my time more than anything else. And obviously, you need to earn some kind of living in order to pay for basic things. And either you can do that by renting your time to somebody else, or you can do that by going your own way and figuring out how to earn on your own. I figured that at 22 years old, it's risky to do your own thing, to write your own script. But at 22, I had the least amount of risk that I was ever going to have because I really have nothing to lose. If you try something for a year, 2, 3, 4, you can try something for a number of years and there's very little repercussions for trying that. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to do it, this is the time to do it. And the reason that I started something in nutrition was because I knew the space well. My curiosity over the years had led me to just develop, I think, a pretty comprehensive understanding of nutrition principles, what people like, what people don't like, why people like those things, really just like what is true and what isn't true. And so because I had a pretty good mental framework for thinking through nutrition, I was able to come up with a product based on that framework that I thought would be successful. And that product was Atlas. And then when you combine those two things, like, all right, I want to start something and I have this nutrition product, then you get a business out of that.
That's awesome. As a Tufts graduate, so Tufts is obviously a very esteemed post-secondary institution. What was your major there? And did you always think, like, I want to start my own business, I want to have freedom of my time? Or were you kind of going down a more corporate or, I guess, traditional pathway for a 22-year-old? And then kind of what made you kind of change that direction?
That's a good question. So I studied economics there. That was what my degree was actually in. Although most of my time there was spent studying languages because I am not very good naturally at languages. And I took two that are difficult. I took Arabic and Mandarin. Wow. And so I had to kind of like brute force my way to learn those languages because I don't really have an ear for it. And so it was just a ton of time memorizing, especially with those languages, with Chinese in particular, because there's no alphabet. So it's all just basically memorizing pictures and characters. And so I spent, though I majored in economics, I spent most of my time with languages. And I actually, when I went into Tufts, I really didn't know I wasn't like I'm going here to get a business education, because if I thought that, I probably would have gone to a school that was more like business oriented, because Tufts is liberal arts. I had a couple of things that I knew I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to do something difficult. Like I just knew that in my head. And I was actually thinking, like, out of all the schools that I applied to, my number one school initially was Annapolis, the Naval Academy. So that was my number one school. And so I was like, I want to do something difficult. And so I was kind of thinking that lens. I was also thinking about potentially going into academia and becoming an economist. And I was like, I think that's going to be too dry for me. And so when I was like, well, I want to do something difficult, and I am interested in this like kind of idea of having control of my own time, you just kind of come to the logical conclusion that like starting a business is really like it's the only option you have.
For sure.
So it's pretty obvious that businesses in general don't usually succeed. Like I think it's something like 95% of them fail within the first 1 or 2 years. And I'm wondering, what do you think it was about your particular mindset or character traits or personality that allowed yours to succeed in the way that it has?
It's a good question. And yeah, you're right. I actually, in the first month that I started the company, I went to a Fortune 500 executive. They had retired. They had a beautiful multi-million-dollar house that I went to, and I was going to them as potentially asking them to be an investor or an advisor in the brand. And I went to them, went up to their house. There's a Ferrari in the driveway. And I basically told him, I was like, hey, this is what my plan is. And he said to me, like verbatim, you have no team, you have no money, you have no experience. There's a 99% chance that you're going to fail. Oh. And he's right. He was right. It's like you can deliver that in a way that's not as harsh as that, but he was ultimately right. So I think the reason that I didn't become that 99% is, one, you do have to keep going. Anybody that has something successful, by virtue of them still existing, they have continued to persist. But I think this is where I would diverge from like hustle culture, which is just basically all about like action and doing more, and you got to hustle, because action without direction is just kind of noise. And if you don't have a very clear idea of where you're going or what you're doing or how you're providing value, then you can hustle as much as you want, but you're not necessarily going to be successful. So I think the combination of dedicated action with a kind of clear direction, that combination is a powerful combination, and it significantly increases your odds of success.
It's very well put. I want to backtrack for 1 second, just because I'm curious. What was the purpose in taking both Mandarin and Arabic at Tufts?
I took in middle school and high school, I took Latin. And then when I got to Tufts, I was like, all right, I want to take a language that you can speak. Okay. And I guess you can speak Latin. Nobody does speak Latin. And so I was looking at what the options were, and I was like, well, Arabic just seems like cool. It just seems like weird and cool to me. And I don't know anybody that speaks Arabic, so let me try that. So I did that for my freshman year. I think my freshman year and then half my sophomore year. And then I was like, well, I know I want to go abroad, but I'm more interested in going abroad to Asia than I am going abroad to the Middle East. Because I think at the time, the only option was, I think it was Jordan. And I was like, I'd rather go to China, I think, than Jordan. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to switch to Mandarin. So I switched to Mandarin halfway through, and then I basically started again from ground zero and had to relearn it. And then I did end up going abroad to China, where I lived for 6 months with a Chinese family, which was great. Yeah, that's why.
So mostly just for like the love of the game, like just take on a challenge. It wasn't like necessarily a degree. I mean, you do have to take a language at a liberal arts school, right?
Yeah, you do have to take a language. And I was like, I don't really want to do French or Spanish, although it definitely would have been easier because those are derived from Latin. So I had that base, but I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me, but I was just like, I just want to do something. It definitely did not make my life easier.
So there's no alphabet with one of those, right? Is there Chinese or Arabic? There's no Chinese. There's no alphabet. Like you can't really refer to normal letters.
Yeah. It's tough because in Arabic, there's an alphabet. So it's similar to English, where even if you don't know what a word means in English, you can sound it out. There's no equivalent in Chinese. Like if you don't know what a character means, you just don't know what it means. Like there's maybe like some similarities between characters, but there's no alphabet that allows you to sound out stuff that you don't
That's super
recognize.
interesting.
I kind of had a similar experience here. I took sign language.
Yeah, I took the easy way out. We're from Toronto or from Canada, so we speak
Yeah.
French. I took Spanish. I want you to explain that.
Well, yeah, I took sign language. I thought it would be cool. It'd just be like a nice skill to have. And like
Yeah.
it's the same thing. You can't sound out just
Tell them
no.
the craziest part though.
Oh, and my teacher was deaf.
Oh.
So it was full immersion. Like
Yeah.
there was a translator for the first day, and then it was just like you just had to pick it up. Like she would do
Wow.
she didn't speak fully in sign the whole time. Like she would refer to the board and show you what she was saying, but it was basically full immersion. It was a pretty good experience though.
So is the classroom just silent for the entire class?
Yeah. It's also
Wow.
they find it as sort of a sign of disrespect, deaf people, if you're talking near them. They
Yeah.
prefer that you sign for obvious reasons, because it's kind of like you're withholding the conversation.
There is an alphabet in sign language, right? There's alphabet.
There is
in
there is
words.
an alphabet, but it's like so the tests were a combination of you going up to her and signing and then also writing some stuff down. But like if I didn't know a word or something, it's like you can't really Google what does this
Right.
mean, because it's just a
Arbitrary. Yeah.
so yeah, you can't really do anything about that.
Right.
Back to kind of the business topic, which is obviously the main focus. So you talked a lot about kind of like intentionality and how something that we use on our basketball team, our coach always says, it's not how you do, or it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And I'm curious, like, what was something, maybe one of your biggest intentions while starting this business that really allowed you to separate yourself from the other 99%? Maybe it was a mission statement. Maybe it was like what makes you guys different?
I think part of the reason that I was successful is because I really truly cared about what I was doing, and I truly cared about my customers. I was not doing it like to make a quick buck, because I knew that this path was probably not the best way of doing that. But I cared, and was very I'll give you an example. When I started it, every single order that we sent out, there would be a handwritten quote in that order. And that quote was from, I had a list of maybe 100 different quotes from ancient Greek philosophers to Nelson Mandela to Yoda, and
Awesome.
do or do not try is the one from Yoda. And I would put those in. And I didn't do that because I was like, oh, this is a good business idea. I just did that because I cared. And I think caring, especially now when there's so much kind of separation, and I think authenticity, not in the way that creators or influencers are like, oh, I'm going to be authentic, but just actual human connection. I think it goes a really, really long way. Actually, I have a good example of this just this past day. I had a person reach out who's going to do something very challenging. She's a pretty big name. She was interviewed on Joe Rogan's podcast, and she was like, hey, I'm looking for sponsors. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to support. And I don't need anything in return. I just like what you're doing. So we'll be happy to get you hooked up with bars, and truly just don't need anything in return. And just because I was so we were very authentic about it, she was that's one of the greatest kind of partnerships or messages that I've gotten from a company. And so I think that people are just really kind of craving almost human connection in a sense. And so I do think that really helps if you are starting something. I think that helps. And that's a very almost an easy way to separate whatever you're doing, because presumably all businesses are going to involve humans.
Yeah, I liked on one of the other podcasts you did, this kind of parallels into what you were saying. I saw that you ran 100 miles in 6 days, and you ate nothing but Atlas bars for those 6 days to prove that you stood behind your product. I think that is one of the most incredible CEO stories I think I've ever heard, that I believe in what we're selling, and this is how much I stand behind it, that I'm willing to run 100 miles, do something insanely physically endurance, and only eat the product that we sell. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was a challenging thing to do. I probably wouldn't recommend doing it, but yeah, when you're trying to communicate that I know that we care a lot, and probably a lot more than other companies, but how do you actually demonstrate that? How do you communicate that to others? And that was it. Yeah, I gave up. Probably not. There are probably other ways to do it that don't involve putting my body through the ringer like that. But I was kind of thinking of if you know what Super Size Me is, the movie about McDonald's where the guy just eats McDonald's. I was like, well, clearly this is the inverse of that almost, because clearly if the CEO of McDonald's were to eat McDonald's and only McDonald's for a year, he probably would not be in very good condition after that.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about your sales experience and how that led into Atlas, because I had a sort of little door-to-door sales sprint in my junior year of college. And do you think that that's something that people who are currently in college now should consider doing, is going to do door-to-door sales or some kind of in-person sales that sort of forces them to learn how to sell things?
I think the way that I think about decisions is what's the upside and the downside. And if something has significant upside with little downside, then I think it's probably a good decision to make. And I think in that case, there's very little downside to doing that. And I think there's a ton of upside, especially with like, it's very uncomfortable. You can't really sugarcoat that. It's just a very uncomfortable thing to do, to go up to strangers and to try and convince them to buy something, especially when that's not really done in this day and age anymore. Like I remember other people would be, I don't know whatever other college kids were doing. And I was like dialing random people and asking if they would let me come to their house and sell knives for 45 minutes to them, which is just like that. When you do that a couple thousand times, like you just grow a muscle that you don't really have unless you do that. So I think it's a really good experience. It definitely was really helpful for what I do now. And I think probably the biggest thing that I learned from doing it is that the best type of sales is when you're not actually selling. It's basically just when you're communicating, when you're educating somebody, you're just like, hey, this makes sense. Like if I were to try and sell somebody an iPhone that had never seen one before, you don't have to sell it. You're not like, this is made with titanium, this has Gorilla Glass. You're just like, this has basically everything you want to do in your pocket. It's extremely easy to use. Like, why would you not want to use this? You would be hurting yourself by not using this. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of easy for me to sell the knives because they just made a good product. And when it's like the last knife you ever have to buy, it just made it super easy for me to be like, yeah, it's you're kind of doing yourself a disservice if you don't get this.
For sure. I feel like we've done a little bit of a disservice to the product by not just kind of having you introduce what the product is. Obviously, we've tried it. Chris annihilated them, and we obviously know the benefits for athletes, especially, which most of our audience is athletes who would definitely be interested in something like this. So I wanted to give you a couple minutes to explain what the product is before we kind of go any further into your story and background and everything.
Cool. Yeah, it's basically, my goal was to effectively just take real food and put it into like a more convenient format. And so it's a nutrition bar format, so a rectangle with high protein, so 20 grams protein, just 1 gram of sugar. It's got 11 grams of fiber in it. And all of the ingredients are ingredients that you would be able to find in a store. And you would be able to make this yourself. Like if I gave you could make this in your kitchen. And that's definitely not the norm for most foods, most packaged foods. You cannot make it in your kitchen. You don't have the processing equipment. You don't have the ingredients. You can't usually buy maltodextrin or sucralose at your local store, but all the ingredients that we use are pure natural ingredients. And so, yeah, I was just like, I didn't view it as very risky because I was like, well, I don't think if I base this product on low sugar, I don't think that in like a decade, people are going to say, oh, you know what, this is great, but I just wish it had more sugar in it. And same thing with the ingredients. I was like, I don't think people are ever going to be like, oh, this is great, but I just wish it had chemicals and additives added to it. Yeah. And so I was very confident in the product because I was like, I'm pretty certain about these things that they're not going to change. And here we are this many years later and they've gotten more popular.
Definitely.
Yeah. So going back to your growth as an entrepreneur, what do you think were some of the personal hurdles that you had to get over in order to grow this business? Because like I know, let's say hypothetically, if I was to start a business, the aspect of like introducing myself to strangers and networking and doing all that stuff, like that's the hurdle I would hit like right away. Like the whole grinding in a dark room and doing all that stuff, like that's second nature to me. But the extroverted essential parts of growing a business, that would be the first hurdle I would hit. So what were some of those that you had to get over?
I think, and I've said this before, but I think the greatest hurdle for starting something is just managing your own psychology, because the same thing that makes entrepreneurship and doing your own thing attractive, which is writing your own scripts, having control over your own destiny, is also the thing that makes it scary and uncertain, because you have to write your own script. You don't have, like when you go to college, for instance, your script is like, all right, you're going to be here for 4 years. You're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You don't really have anxiety you might have anxiety for other reasons, but you don't have anxiety about like what the next 4 years is going to look like when you show up at college, because it's a very clear script. But if you just decide like, okay, I'm going to start something, there's no equivalent. There's no structure for your mind to grasp onto and be like, this is what this year is going to look like. This is what the next year. And so it's very hard to navigate that uncertainty, especially if you're doing something on your own. And so I think the most challenging thing to do for me, at least, was finding out ways to basically continue to force myself to keep going. And I had just so many like tools that I use to do that. And it's a challenge, because in my case, I could have just stopped at any time. There was nothing to, when there were like bad days, there was nothing to propel me to keep going. Like I didn't need to do it. I could have stopped if the pain got too great. And I figured out ways to keep going. So I would say the psychology aspect of it's probably the part that's the most challenging.
Yeah, I've heard one of the quotes from a couple of the guys that I listened to on TikTok. His name's Alex Hormozy. He said, the hard thing about entrepreneurship is that it's not like a marathon where you know how long you're gonna be running. It's like someone just tells you run and there's no finish line, and you have to go until they tell you to stop.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually very similar to in elite military training, like the Green Berets, or I think the SEALs do this too. They don't tell you when it's over. They just, at some point, it's going to stop. But after days of this training, I think they say just like start running, and you don't know if you're going to be running for a mile. You don't know if you're going to be running for 20 miles. So that uncertainty, it's really hard for the mind. The mind doesn't like uncertainty. And so it's really hard when it has that, and you're basically in that state if you're doing a business for years.
Another thing I heard was that you are actively, or you have done clinical trials with your bars.
Yeah, we just did a couple months ago. And for the same reason that I did the running, I was like, I know that we care more, and I want to demonstrate that instead of running 100 miles. I was like, well, a clinical study might be more persuasive. So we did that actually in Canada is where we did it.
Whereabouts?
Toronto.
Oh,
we worked with a group there that helped us do it. And yeah, it was a very legitimate study. They recruited people for it. They basically put half the people, they had them on blood sugar monitors, and they had them eating white bread. And then the other half they had eating Atlas bars. And then they compared the blood sugar response between the two, and Atlas at the end of the study was 77% lower. So it's like basically a blip. When bread is like this, it's like a spike. Atlas is like a negligible movement. So it's cool that we've done that, because I don't think that many food companies can't do that, because their product would probably be like the white bread, if not worse.
Yeah.
But those that could do it, I don't think that many of them care enough to do it.
Yeah.
I'm curious what a day in the life looks like for you as someone who has their own business, isn't necessarily tied down to something specific. What does like the day in the life of a CEO, founder of a successful business look like?
I think it's really going to be dependent upon that business. I really don't have like a set schedule. Like yesterday, I was just up until like 1, just doing stuff because there's still momentum and I wanted to get some stuff done. But really, I try to spend my time on, and I've definitely changed my perspective on this, but on things that are really what I would call like higher leverage tasks. So like me responding to like customers, although I did this for years, that's not a high leverage task, because beyond the interaction with that one customer, it doesn't have a greater impact. And so I actually remember when I was first starting, I would pack all the orders and send them myself. And a guy that I talked to, he was like, that's a horrible use of your time. And it didn't really make sense to me, because I was like, well, no, I'm being like a good business owner. Like I'm doing the work myself. And then I realized that like, yeah, he's right. My time is the most valuable. And if I'm not building the company, then if I'm working inside the company, then I can't be working on actually building the company.
How large is the company? Like how many people are you working with, or partners or anything like that? Just kind of curious on how
on a given week, we're working with between like it changes, it's more fluid, but like probably 10 to 12 people in a given week.
Okay. Super interesting.
So I'm a senior. I think we're both seniors, and we're both going to be graduating in roughly 6 months. So, kind of selfishly, I want to ask for someone who's about to graduate college, what would you recommend that they do as soon as they leave this place? Would you recommend they go, like I said before, into sales? They travel, they start their own business? What would you recommend that they do to get the best possible, maybe let's say leverage for their time or experiences to set them up for a successful life?
That is a good question.
Thank you.
Or do you recommend Chris goes and lives in a trailer in Indonesia, teaching some families little boy English?
I think if I were to give advice to my younger self, and actually one of the reasons why I decided to do this was because one of like the core, I guess, like axes that I made this decision on was out of all the opportunities I had available to me as a 22-year-old, I think that I'll learn more doing this than I will do anything else. So like I could go into a different role, but I think 2 to 3 years of trying to start my own business, I'm just going to have to ingest and learn a lot of information that I probably wouldn't have to in another role. So based on that, I would say try to put yourself in situations where you can just learn and learn quickly, because as somebody told me, knowledge is something that can never be taken away from you. So if you can accumulate it and do it faster, then you have more, especially if you do it younger in your life, earlier in your life, then you have more time on the back end of your life to use it and to use it for your own benefit and to create value. So I know it's not like a specific skill set, but for the skill sets, I do think trying to avoid pigeonholing yourself into a specific industry that's like very niche that might not be applicable to other things, unless you're extremely passionate about that. But I think broadly speaking, like having good sales skills, those can serve you well in a variety of contexts. It's very fluid and applicable to other things. So, yeah, not a straightforward answer, but that's what I would tell my younger self.
Okay. I'll digest that. Something I do want to ask, because I heard in the other podcast as well that you read a lot. I was maybe looking for some book recommendations or maybe something that, like your top 5 favorite books of all time, which is obviously not limited to like business. Maybe there's philosophy, maybe there's nonfiction, maybe there's fiction. I'm just wondering if I could pick your brain on that.
Or do you do something else in your free time?
2 books come to mind. One is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It's just an excellent book. He's the founder of Nike, and it starts with, I've probably read it 7 or 8 times. I usually do an annual read, but it starts with him being very young. I think he was 23 or 24 when he started Nike. He actually starts like very early on. He does a world tour. He just travels the world by himself, and then he comes back and he starts the company. It's a really like good story, but because it's also the actual story of somebody who built one of the most iconic companies of all time, I think it's just great for anybody who's interested in potentially making their own thing. And then another book that was just on a different kind of spectrum is Meditations, which is it's a book by Marcus Aurelius. I read that. I remember reading that, I think when I was a junior in college, and it just like hit me in a way that other things have not hit me, because it finally gave me a way to, I think if you don't have control over if your emotions kind of just dictate your actions, then you are just basically a slave to your emotions. And so this kind of gave me the first toolkit for detaching myself from that, and for being able to, it almost did feel like a superpower when I first discovered it.
Yeah, it's the best sales pitch I think I've ever heard for Meditations is the fact that it is the only book of its kind that exists anywhere ever, because it was written by the most powerful man he ruled the known world. And he wrote down notes to himself in a journal that he never intended to be published.
Yeah.
And then these are just available for us to read. Like, he didn't even want this stuff to be published. He'd probably be horrified that everyone was reading.
Yeah, he'd probably be pissed that millions of people have read it. Yeah, that's what makes it's so pure. It's just like, so because he never wrote it for an audience. It's just like his pure unadulterated thoughts.
Yeah, it's the most powerful man in the world talking about how he's struggling to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
Who is this?
Marcus Aurelius, he was a Roman emperor.
He was Roman emperor.
Emperor. And so he could point at somebody and they would be dead. He could have any woman he wanted. He had ultimate power. And he wrote about how in his book he he's basically found it, not only found it, but he took the ideas of Stoicism and embodied them. He wanted to make sure that he didn't abuse his power. And the only reason he talks about not stepping down as emperor is because he believed that if he steps down, the next person that gets into power is not going to have these ideas, and they're not going to have this restraint to not abuse all these things. Yeah, I do.
I actually just finished the book that I was reading yesterday.
It basically embodies the Stoic ideal that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react. That's basically what it is.
I'm living right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've seen the movie Gladiator, he's actually the emperor in that movie.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
very
dies
interesting.
in the initial scene. Spoiler.
So you took a leap of faith after graduating very young, and obviously paid off, and you lived a life now that you were hoping for financial freedom, time freedom. How do you define success, and are you happy with how everything is unfolded or where you are?
I think my definition right now, and it's probably going to morph over time as it has, but my definition of success is being able to look in the mirror at the end of the day and be content with the person that you see staring back at you. And I think at the end of the day, that person's opinion is really only the opinion that matters, because that person is with you 24/7. And if your definition of success is contingent upon what others think, then when you're alone, you can do things that they're not necessarily going to know about, but you always are there. You are always observing yourself. And so I think if you can be satisfied with what you've done today, with who you are, with how you acted, then it's pretty hard, I think, I don't know. I try to think of ways in which that isn't like a good definition of success, and I can't really break it. Not yet. I might be able to, but not yet.
Super powerful.
So would you say that you're not necessarily optimized for happiness? Because I know, like, when I've listened to other entrepreneurs talk about their lives and what they've done, they're much more optimized for meaning. Like, they don't really worry about, am I happy or not? Or it's like, am I doing something meaningful in the long term?
Yeah, I think that we as a society have kind of set our sights on the wrong target. And I do not think that I think that happiness, similar to pleasure, it's fleeting. It's a temporary, ephemeral state. It's not supposed to be something that you constantly feel. And so I really try and optimize for what I would just call peace. Basically just being content all times. And that's how I feel right now. Like I just feel very even keeled. I don't really have ups. I don't have downs. I just feel just kind of at peace.
Very interesting.
So where do you see Atlas going in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Do you see yourself staying with the company? Could you see yourself transitioning out of this, selling it, maybe moving on to something else? Where do you see this going?
I see us trying to build it, and I'm working right now just to really build it as quickly as possible, because I do think it can help a lot of people. And I think now, with where people are at, with where the country's at, with what the country needs in terms of food that doesn't actively hurt people, but actually helps them, I think we're in a good position to help solve a lot of that. So I don't know, actually. I don't have a firm answer for 5 years or 10 years. I'm just going to keep doing this as long as I feel like I can contribute value, and as long as it is something that I enjoy doing every day.
In the other podcast, you also said that you're slightly introverted and you're not exactly the type of guy that walks into rooms like shaking everybody's hand. I'm definitely very similar to that aspect. And I would ask, what allowed you to overcome that? Like was it just the drive and the passion, that meaning that you sustained from this business, that allowed you to just say, I don't care that I'm afraid to go into these rooms and talk to these people, and that I'm naturally introverted. I just need to get this done to make the business happen?
Yeah, I definitely am on the introvert side 100%. Like, I think the best definition that I've seen of the two is like, do you recharge by being alone, or do you recharge by being with other people? And for me, it's absolutely by being alone. So I know I fall there. I feel that it's a switch that I can turn on when I need to, but it definitely comes at a cost. Like, my battery gets drained if I do have to do it. So I think over the years, I've just become more conscious of like, okay, you can do this, but there's going to be a cost to doing this. I don't feel the same way about like one-on-one and like smaller interactions like this, I feel like actually energize me. But if I were to walk into a room, it's just, I think my mind just tries to ingest like all the information at once and all the different dynamics. And it just becomes almost like overwhelming. So yeah, I think I realized that it's a tool set you need to have. I suppose you could be successful in this day and age by just being a keyboard warrior, but you expand. If you think about yourself as like a video game character, if you can unlock that skill set, it expands where that character can go and what that character can do in the video game. So I kind of think of it as like that, like something that I don't necessarily enjoy, but I can do it if I need to.
If you were to isolate 2, 3, 4 traits or characteristics that allow someone to be successful at something, whether it's in business, whether it's in sport, whether it's in relationships, what do you think that those would be?
I think in business and in sports, I don't know if this necessarily applies to relationships, but I think what is very important is how quickly you can process information and how quickly you can extract meaning from that information. And I'll use a sports example. Like I grew up a Brady fan because I grew up in the Boston area. And if you look at his interviews of how he talks about why he was so good, has nothing to do with physical ability. That's like widely documented that I think has the slowest 40 time of all time at the combine. But what he was able to do was he was able to analyze the defense and understand what they were going to do basically before they knew what they're going to do. So he didn't need to have the athleticism of Lamar Jackson, because before the linebacker moved into the slot, he already knew he was going to do that. And so he could put the ball there before they did it because he was able to process information extremely quickly. And I think the same thing is true in business. You need to be able to process information quickly and come to a conclusion that you can then act on out of that. Uncertainty and hesitation, it kills in sports, it kills in business. I don't know if processing information really applies so much in relationships.
Maybe relationships was a bad tagline.
Yeah, maybe not. But for sure, I think the ability to basically look at information, see the patterns, extract insight from that, and then take action on that, I think is extremely important.
And was there a specific experience you had, maybe something you did or something you worked on that helped you develop that, which you were able to translate into a successful business?
I think that's where curiosity comes into play, because curiosity is a kind of self-propelling mechanism that helps you see those patterns more easily because you're curious, because you're always thinking, you're always questioning as you go. Like, I think it's a real shame that you guys are graduating from education, and a lot of people, they just view once you graduate, like education stops. Mm-hmm. And if you have the mindset of just like viewing the world as a classroom, you always should be learning, and you always should be refining how you think about the world. And I feel like that's probably been one of the most helpful things for me, because I just continually try and refine how I process information, and that leads to better decisions, and better decisions leads to better outcomes.
Amazing.
So
we only have 2 minutes left on this.
I can see. So we have Zoom free, and for whatever reason they lock you down to like 40 minutes per thing.
The upsells.
But there's 2 minutes left. So, I mean, if you're okay with it, we could open a new Zoom meeting after this and do it like the final 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much time you have, because I know we were only originally blocked for 7:45.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I should be good.
Okay. So my next question was going to be who you are outside of Atlas and as a business owner. Like, what are your hobbies? What do you do? You might not have a whole lot of free time, but when you do have free time, other than reading, what do you do?
Yeah, right now it's weird because I feel like over the years, who I am, I don't view the business as like distinctly separate from myself. Like, I know if you go to a job 9 to 5 and then you kind of take off the corporate persona after 5 p.m. and then you're kind of a different person, it's all very like integrated in my life. So I could have a conversation for Atlas, and then I could have a conversation like in my life. Like, I might do those things both at like 3 p.m. and it's just very like fluid. And sometimes for Atlas, I won't be working at 4 p.m. and sometimes I'll be working until 1 a.m. like I was last night. So it's much more just like much more fluid than I think it's more like binary in our culture. But outside of when I'm not doing Atlas things, running is something that I've always come back to again and again. It's funny because I actually hated running. I hated running growing up. And another thing that I just kind of forced myself to be better at. I running and pull-ups were two things that I just hated. And I just had such a bad mentality about it when I was younger. I was just like, oh, you're genetically bad at running or you're genetically bad at pull-ups. Like you don't have whatever pull-up gene that exists. And then I realized like, no, it's not that you're genetically bad at these things, is that you've never been good at them. And because you're not good at them, they don't feel good to do. And because they don't feel good to do, you don't do them. And so you stay bad at them. And then I just started doing them and I was like, oh, these are actually, yeah, you can get good at them quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's always been something that I come back to. I actually got a Vespa, I'll probably get a motorcycle at some point in the near future, but I got a Vespa earlier this year in North Carolina. And so I flew down to North Carolina and then I drove it up to New York over a weekend. Yeah. And then I did New York to Boston after that. So stuff like that I love. I just like doing like stuff because I'll always remember the weekend that I did that. I probably won't remember. I don't remember what I did last weekend, but if you do these like distinct, unique things, then you'll always remember that.
How do you manage relationships, whether it's personal relationships, friendships, while being in such a time-consuming endeavor like being a business owner and founder, CEO? I play college basketball at Elms. I'm in a long-distance relationship to my girlfriend at home in Toronto, 8-hour drive. We see each other maybe throughout the school year between 5 and 7 times. And obviously playing college basketball is a large time commitment. Working out, especially during the season, like I'm in the facility for 5 hours at a time with my phone down. Obviously, she started working full time this year because she graduated last year, and so I would be curious to know some tips. Maybe it's the wrong time to ask because we're about to be finished it because we've been doing it for 4 years and this is the 4th year. But for anybody else listening in that position, or just because I'm curious how you were able to manage.
I think something that I've observed over the years is that what's less important is quantity than quality, meaning that you can be like physically around somebody for a lot of time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have like a deep relationship or good experiences with them. And conversely, you can spend not a lot of time with somebody, but if that's very dedicated, like very deep time, then you can actually like bond like pretty quickly. So I think what helps me is that I might not have as much time as other people to spend with my friends, my family, but when I am with them, I'm fully with them and it's like very authentic time. I'm not really distracted by anything else and I'm fully engaged. And I think one of the most important things is also making sure the other person feels what I would call like seen. So if you're having a conversation with them, you're not just waiting for your turn to speak like many people do, but you're actually like receiving and absorbing what they're saying. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like when you were talking about sign language before, I actually was curious about sign language and wanted to learn more. So yeah, I think understanding that, I think a lot of relationships are built on quality more than quantity of time. And I think that can really help with managing time once you realize that.
Sure.
I've got, I think, 2 more here. The first one is I saw like an early, I think it was a Reddit post or something of Atlas bars having ashwagandha in them. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, first of all, what was the rationale behind having it in there in the first place? And then why you took it out? Because I think it's a pretty unique thing for a protein bar to have ashwagandha in it.
Yeah. It's a good question. So we initially put it in because I was like, well, we have this product that we know is good. And if we add additional reason for somebody to get it, like an additional functional ingredient, then that should make it even like more compelling. And so we had it in there for a year or two. And what I realized is that though that like logic can make sense. I didn't fully appreciate that having a ingredient, even though it might be like objectively good, it's going to deter a lot of people because a word like ashwagandha is just very, like, most people that I've spoken with cannot even pronounce it right. And so it's like a very, when the mind sees something that that it doesn't recognize, it doesn't like, especially if it's something that you're about to put in your body, it doesn't necessarily like that. So I felt that after having it in there, that it was doing, it wasn't necessarily doing harm, but I didn't think that it was adding a lot. And I also felt that it was distracting from the main reason why people were buying the product, which is that it tastes great, clean ingredients, really good macros.
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, the last one I have here is, can you recall maybe one or a few of the mistakes you made while growing this business, like in the early days as you were younger, like things you just didn't know that you didn't know, that you can look back now and go like, yeah, if I could go back and do that, I probably wouldn't do that the same way.
Yeah, it's a very, very long list. We'll probably talk for a year about that. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was conflating like effort put in with outcomes, meaning that like the more I grind, the more success, or the more I'm going to move things forward. And I'll give the example of like I could pack boxes for 16 hours a day, and I would technically be like grinding, but I wouldn't necessarily be moving the business forward. Conversely, I could spend 1 hour finding the right person to talk to at like Walmart, and that 1 hour could lead to like multi-millions of dollars of revenue. So it's hard for our brains to like accept that like you can actually work less and achieve more, especially with like the hustle culture and all of that. But I think that lesson took way too long for me to learn, because I'm somebody that like I'm almost like attracted to the hard stuff. So thinking that like, oh, you actually can do less and do better if you focus, so long as you are focusing on the right things. And that kind of goes back to the comment that I made like at the beginning about motion does not necessarily mean that you're actually progressing, and you need the right direction and the right action in order to, I think, make progress. And that's probably the biggest thing that I really wish that I had learned. And yeah, also just, I think trusting my gut. I waited too long to do that. And I'm a very like rational, logical person. And so when I would have like a gut feeling, I wouldn't really follow. I would like override it with reason. And I think what I didn't realize is that your gut feeling is basically just like, you might not be able to articulate why you feel something, but you feel it for a reason. And it's because you've like, over the course of your life, you've like ingested a lot of information, and you've kind of embodied that. Like you don't, if there's like a car coming down the road and you're about to cross the street, you don't necessarily need to articulate like the feeling that you feel and like why you feel like anxious about that. So I think trusting my gut and focusing on the right things are probably the two biggest mistakes that I made.
Awesome. Quick question before we wrap it up. Super unrelated and informal. Are you a fan of ice baths?
I've done them. There's just kind of like a pain to like pull together. I've done them a bunch. I've done like cold showers more just because it's easier to do. But yeah, if there's an ice bath, I will definitely always do it.
I'm a huge fan of ice baths. We have one here, and I think like just it's I think it feels like good on my body, but B, the fact that like all my teammates will come into the training room getting ice and they'll be like, yo, you're crazy, whatever, and like it's something difficult, and kind of like the first couple of seconds are miserable, but then after that you get a sense of pleasure, not necessarily because it actually feels good, but because you overcame the hard part. That is something that's really special.
I think it's a little bit masochistic, honestly.
What do you mean?
Being into
Do you make up that word because my name is Max?
No,
like
masochistic. You like pain for the sake of pain. Like it's just unnecessary. Like
an ice bath?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit masochistic.
I don't think it's actually painful at all.
I used to do cold showers, and then I kind of had to steer away from it because I saw a few studies that it might kill hypertrophy and have sort of negative effects on muscle growth. But I do think it's a little bit masochistic.
But I don't think it's painful. Like I'm not in there like suffering.
what's the reason that you do it? Like, what's your primary motivation for doing it?
That my back really hurts and my knees hurt, and when I get out of it, it makes me feel a lot better. And I also
So
think
it's for how you feel after. It's not for like, you're not like, I'm hungry for this pain.
no, not at all. I actually don't think I'm a very big fan. Like, for example, I took an ice bath at the coldest temperature that the athletic trainer would let me take, which was like 45 degrees Fahrenheit, which is water. Like she said before I got in there, she put 3 or 4 like Gatorade jugs of ice in it for me. And I was a couple people took the ice bath before me, and then when she did that for me, then no one else was able to take it after because they and listen, that was cold. That was probably uncomfortable for the first couple. But like I genuinely like feel great. Like after, or even during, I feel like tons of endorphins going, and it's awesome. So I just was curious because I feel like that would be relatively related to some of the things that you said before. Before we let you go, where can
actually, I do have one more question.
Oh, let it fly.
I heard the backstory of where you got the name Atlas, and I think it was cool. I think it'd be nice if you could retell that. And then also I have a follow-up question after that.
Oh, we're not even close to done.
Well, no, I remembered that I heard that and I just thought it was, yeah.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I did like 8 years of Latin. And so that introduced me to Greek mythology. So I always kind of liked that. And then I read that book on Nike, and I didn't realize until reading that book that he had gotten that name from Greek mythology. Nike is the Greek goddess of victory. Also,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. And the like myth is that big battle on the plains of Marathon. Guy ran 26 miles. He said the word Nike to announce to the ruler that they had won the battle, and then he just dies. And so that was where the original marathon came from, allegedly. Probably not, but it sounds cool. So I was like, well, that's cool. Let me see if I can find something similar. So I went to Greek mythology, Atlas. I was like, oh, that's cool. It's the guy that holds the world on his shoulders. He's the Titan of endurance. Like that seems to fit well. And so I like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Have you dabbled in any other like Greek mythological things? This might be my follow-up.
What, like how deeply?
Like just research them, books, read that kind of thing. Because I ask because I'm actively reading Nietzsche. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the quotes that the quotes that I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a bunch of bangers.
He's got a bunch of daggers, but I'm actively reading The Birth of Tragedy, and he just pulls on the themes of Dionysus and Apollo really heavily in that book. So I was just wondering if you had any more background on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty deep into it, especially because when I was a kid, I read there's a book series called Percy Jackson that's all about,
of course,
about that. Yeah, so I don't. They came out with movies on that, right? Movies and maybe a show. Yeah, I read the books way before that, so I don't think I've seen that. But yeah, that stuff. I might be able to name the 12 gods and goddesses if I had to. So I'd say it's like I'm not like full geeked out on it, but I'm like half.
That's a good thing to be geeked out on.
I'm trying to get geeked out on right now. I'm super interested in that.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool because like not many religions now have deities. Not many that I know about have like deities that are like synonymous with like elements. Mm-hmm. You know, like Poseidon is like the ocean, and so I think there's something cool with that where it's like the actual god or goddess is like tied to the element.
Yeah, I also think it's insanely cool that like as like a narrative tool that they used to use them to symbolize certain things, like the goddess of endurance and the goddess of ecstasy and order and that stuff. I just think that's so insanely interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. It actually makes it far easier to like, instead of just abstractly talking about these different values, if you have like Hades and you're like, oh, he's the bad guy, he's like underworld, death. It's like way easier for our minds to like, picture that than it is just to talk about like sin or like death.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's a good point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making the time for us today. I think this was super valuable. Where can our audience find you, find the bars, find the product, and just everything?
Atlas Bars. If you just type that in, we'll come up. And if you find Atlas, you'll find me somewhere. So that's definitely the easiest way.
All right, perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, she danced in my